don't cry. You can rely on me, honey.
Well, welcome everyone to the AxPx podcast. I am your host, Sean DeRager, and with me today, Joey Avalos is back.
Hey, Sean, how you doing, man?
Good. After I kicked him to the curb as co-host, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm not bitter. Just kidding.
I am. No, I think the way the show is going, at least this season, with my schedule and stuff, and the way interviews have been kind of popping up, it's just been easier for me to kind of just grab an interview and do it and move on. But I think, Joey, I feel like you're still kind of the silent co-host. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm always like, I wonder what Joey's going to think about this interview, or, so.
Well, I'm there for you, man. Anytime you need. So.
Well, we'll have you on more, and I think when interviews work out and you're available, and if it's something, you can be there for, we'll definitely do that. But anyway, cool. So I last episode I was trying to get a director onto the show, but he's been busy editing his newest movie, and when he's not doing all the movie stuff, he's been spending a lot of time with his family. So I haven't really been kind of pushing, the whole interview thing and everything. So we'll try that another time. But I've been wanting to get Joey back on the show too, just to kind of, him and I haven't really talked a whole lot about where we're at in as far as our our journey in whatever, because we both hate labels, so so it's like, where you at, man? I don't know. So I thought it would be good for us to kind of sit down and chat about where we've gone since the last time we talked, for the podcast. So Joey, what have you been doing, man, since we last sat down for a podcast?
Well, besides what I do daily, I manage bands, a couple artists here and there, and still continue trying to write. I got into trying to write a young adult novels. Been working on a couple different things right now, and but more on the philosophical side of things. Just continue reading. Really studying a lot of historical, early Christianity, first century Judaism, and stuff like that. It's always been a passion of mine for the last 3.5 years, I think now. I've kind of dedicated a couple hours a day to kind of researching, reading different scholars, and learn a little bit more about kind of the faith I was brought up into,
Yeah.
So I continue doing what I've always been doing, man. I still have a passion for it. I still feel like I'm not just I'm not exhausted yet. I know I have a couple friends that are kind of do the same thing and are kind of giving up on it because there's it just feels like a dead end. But to me, I learn a little bit more about myself. I learn a little bit more about people around me, and it helps me, for me, it helps me kind of see the world through different eyes, through everyone's different eyes, everyone's subjective ways of what they believe, why they believe certain things. And it helps me to reevaluate those same things.
Yeah. I've always been the same way too. I haven't been able to dive in as much as I was. And I think for me with my schedule and everything, I was just getting burnt out on the study, the studying up on everything, reading the Bart Ehrman books and stuff like that. So I haven't even hardly been reading or anything, but so my thing is, like I said in kind of the first podcast this year, was I was kind of at a point where I was getting very just kind of cynical, and I wasn't a very positive person to be around. I had a lot of other issues going on where I wasn't feeling happy, health-wise and stuff like that, and so I was just not fun to be around, and I felt the show was kind of like me looking into all this, and my cynicism, my kind of natural skepticism and cynicism was kind of not healthy, and so it was good for me to take a break from recording the podcast and kind of centering myself and getting healthier, and I've lost, I think, 25 pounds. Lost 5 more pounds since I talked to Mike Wittig.
That's awesome, man.
But just being healthier and more. So I think now I'm actually finally at a place where I can actually kind of jump in and do more studying, because I feel like my brain, as far as my brain activity goes, I think I'll be able to be more focused. But I'm enjoying kind of not being so cynical and everything. Do you find yourself being a little less cynical lately, or what's been kind of your journey to that, or are you still very much?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a denial. I never really pictured myself as cynical.
Yeah.
I guess more that I think in anything, when you, I don't know if it's the question is the right way to phrase it, but when you start learning certain things, like it's kind of, for example, like in grade school, you're taught that Christopher Columbus is this almost like this great man, discovered America and all this stuff. And then you go to, later on you learn more about history, and you get into even college history, and you learn that he's basically this bastard that rapes people and did all this crazy stuff. And you're like, why did we have a holiday for this guy? You know? So you learn a little bit more about historical references like that. And I think what you call cynicism, I think, is more of the psychological damage it might have done. Maybe like, oh my gosh, you feel like people lied to you, or feel like people were telling you something that wasn't true.
Right.
So I think we get really defensive in that stuff. It's almost like, how could you do this to me? How could you, and then you almost, in a way, you reflect it out of still trying to work it out. What does it mean to you now? Like, I think a lot of, when people get really defensive or cynical, sometimes it's because they're still dealing with the issues themselves,
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot with me, and I think with you too, like you say, it was unhealthy to the point, but it's also healthy too, because I think it's part of the process of maybe some things that have hurt you in the past.
Yeah. Or,
to be able to recover from that,
Well, yeah, well, I think part of it was, I was like on Facebook, whenever Facebook or whatever, like if anyone would bring anything up in regards to like religion or whatever like that, I would always be like, oh God,
right,
and have something to say about it, and just kind of be a little bit of a jerk, and kind of calling some people out, and it was just not healthy, way to approach things, and I know there's one guy, I want to get him on the show, and but it was I posted something on his Facebook. So he posted some comment or some. I forget what it was, but of course I put a little like nudge in the comments, and he messaged me back, "Hey man, I deleted your post. I'm sorry. Just I just didn't want that negativity on my thing. And I'm like, it's your post. You can do whatever you want. I'm not
exactly.
But it was just kind of that of me. Whenever I would see someone posting something like that, whether or not I thought it was an ignorant post or whatever, whoever. I would just kind of bring it down. I was it was just kind of a jerk move on my part. And on my part, I'm like, well, I'm just trying to educate you and make you think, but the time and place, it wasn't good, so I've kind of distanced myself from being that kind of person. Even when, my wife wants to go to church and that's important to her, so I don't want to, bring her down, and I'm going to go respectfully, and in the past, I would go, and I would, every time the pastor would say something, I have my little checklist of, I don't agree with that. Oh, I don't agree with that, And I still do that in a sense, but I'm just, I think, less vocal about it, you know. Kind of save it for the podcast, or save it for something that where it makes sense, where people actually want to hear these thoughts, as opposed to me just, driving home from church, just kind of ranting about what I didn't like about what the pastor said or whatever, so.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It's tough though, man. I think because we all want to be right, and if we feel like we have, quote unquote, a right view, we want other people to, if we see other people doing something wrong, it's that whole balance of trying to be able to, like you said, to not, you want to tell someone, like, this is the truth. It's almost like you evangelize a different way, like I counter evangelize to these people that maybe come at you and you're like, man, I don't believe anything they're saying right now. I think they've taken something out of context or whatever it could be, it's always going to be a battle, man. I think that's just our human reaction. You know, we tribalize everything, and we always want to be right. And we don't want to hold views that are wrong. And if we feel like other people are, and especially when you got politics, religion, anything, those things what people are really passionate about, it's hard not to, like, you know, sit back and bite your tongue, because you know, because some of the stuff, I think a lot of the times too, you know, we're not completely, it feels like people feel attacked. Like, you know, you might put a comment on someone's Facebook page, you know, disagreeing with what they're saying. To them, they just feel like, wow, you are attacking me. You're hitting them at their core personal beliefs. These people believe in, some people will even die for these beliefs. So if you come at them, they feel like they're being persecuted, you know? Right. And that's kind of, again, it's just trying to find out how can we bridge that gap into a conversation, kind of like your podcast, you know, like having these conversations might be the best platform than just, you know, like you said, going in there commando style and just like punch and then run kind of thing. Or you can't really have a really, I don't know, Facebook's a great platform to have a healthy discussion, because I think, you know, we're always hiding behind the computer, you know, so...
Yeah, and it's funny because it's been hard for me to even try to get some sort of thing like face-to-face, you know, meeting up with people to talk about this stuff. It seems like nobody really wants to, I don't know, come out and even talk about this stuff, you know what I mean? Right. Because I tried doing that, like, skeptic meetup, and that just bombed. That just didn't go anywhere. But nobody, I mean, I think part of it was the name. Nobody wanted to be associated with the word, you know, that word skeptic or whatever, and so that kind of bombed, and then I even met for beers with a gentleman that was kind of this pastor friend of my wife's. Said, "Hey, you should talk to this guy. This guy sounds like he's a pretty open-minded person." I even said, and I had a beer with him, and you know, he had trying to starting up some sort of group like that, but he was very very nice guy, and we had a great conversation, but it was very, like, he was very into, like, apologetics, you know, so anytime I would interject kind of my thought, he would say, well, hey, think about it this way, and it was all just the classic apologetic, you know, steering of the conversation. If you do any sort of studying in apologetics or anything like that, it was very, you know, it was very much all those tactics, and I asked him, like, well, did you ever doubt? Did you ever have, you know, any journey trying of discovery? And he had never doubted at all. You know, he had never gone through anything. So I was like, man, this, you know. So you have your beliefs. I have my journey I'm going through, but we couldn't connect in the middle, even, you know, even at a pub thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's very important you say that, because, man, there are going to be some people out there that seriously will never doubt, never do anything. But we're not all the same people, you know? I mean, to say that we're all going to look at the same evidence, look at the same situation. I mean, there's so much that gets involved of who we are as people, our personalities, where we grew up, what part of the country. I mean, especially in the U.S., man, you know, if I was born in Alabama, per se, I might have a completely different worldview than I do when I live in Arizona. You know, or live in New York. You know, that has a lot to do with your cultural upbringing and who you're surrounded with, you know, and what kind of ideas are coming at you at an early age. And I mean, it's interesting, man, because I find it now, it's not really being a skeptic about certain things. It's about trying to understand people and how can we get along. And I know it sounds pretty hippie-ish kind of stuff, but I see both sides of it. You know, I have some strong evangelical friends that are like, when I see them post on stuff, in a sense, they're trying to defend their faith, but to me, it kind of wants me to separate from them, you know, because it's too harsh. It doesn't fit my palette of how I am, my personality. You know, like something like, oh yeah, it's almost like everyone's calling each other an idiot. You know, you got atheists or agnostics or whoever, you know, skeptics saying, you're idiots. And then you got these, no, you're idiots. I can't believe you can't believe in this God and this way and this way. It's like, oh my gosh. And I think that's where I get kind of exhausted, because I don't, at the end of the day, we're all human. And I wish we can meet at what we can agree on and how can we get along better that way, and find healthy ways to have conversations instead of just kind of rehashing the same old arguments. And I think that gets exhausting.
Well, kind of, it just goes. The conversations just go round and round. And nothing seems to get resolved. Even with so there was recently there was a debate, right, between Ken Ham and who else was that?
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And of course I want to catch up with it, but man, oh man, Facebook and Twitter were just, kind of turning me off from it.
Yeah.
Just the debate going back and forth on both social media platforms. I totally just, and this was something that I would have never done probably, 6 months ago even, or a year ago. I would have been all about that and complaining back and forth, you know what I mean? Just kind of.
Right.
But the fact that I didn't even want to just kind of go there as it was happening and not even comment on it was a huge deal. So, did you watch that debate, or?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did. That's I hear both sides of it. I know some people were saying, why are you debating? Why is Bill Nye the Science Guy debating Ken Ham? It gives credibility to his worldview, his ideology, his theology, actually, at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And then vice versa, some people are like, why is Bill Nye, he's not a science guy, he's a TV personality guy. So almost like the whole thing feels like a joke, So I hear all different sides of it. I watched it. It wasn't anything new to me because, the young Earth creationists and the Creation Museum and all that stuff, I'm aware of it, and I am aware of Ken Ham's theology and how he interprets the Bible and stuff. Do I agree with it? No, and I think that kind of faith is something that I had to because I didn't completely believe like Ken Ham did, I think, in early ways, but when I started to really look historically about the text of the Bible, look at what the earliest Christians really believed, and how it wasn't really uniform. Like, it's not like out of birth, like Jesus died, rose from the dead, and out poof, Christianity, Orthodox Christianity was perfect. It's taken centuries for the church to actually define what is orthodoxy. Mm-hmm. Even to this day, there's still people that are going to disagree on what certain things are orthodoxy and not. And of course, orthodoxy just means the right belief. Of course, everyone thinks they're orthodox. No one ever says they have the wrong belief. Yeah. So it comes into that situation, taking certain parts of the Bible literally, or not understanding what the literature or what kind of like the books of the Bible were actually meant to say, or why they were written in certain ways. I think it could be really unhealthy. And when I reevaluated and learned more how historians go about to construct the past, since we can't have access to the past. We can't reconstruct the past. We only can construct it with using certain kind of tools that historians use to be able to do that, see what probably happened in certain issues and stuff. But looking at the literal stuff, I think that kind of faith is actually dangerous, and not in the same like it's going to hurt people or do something like, on that level, but more of like it's more of a slippery slope. It's kind of, it feels like fingers in your ears, and anything that goes against this thing is automatically wrong, discredited, or you're going to have to find some kind of way to make it work in your worldview instead of kind of be open to new evidence, being open to hearing different sides of it, and then making up your own choice. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you still want to believe in that way, who am I to say? Again, that's what makes us all different. To me, I couldn't hold a belief the way that Ken Ham sees the Bible. It's not physically, my mind does not work that way. I can't program it to do that because that's not who I am. There's certain people that are like that, and they see the world through his eyes, through Ken Ham's eyes. And I always say it's Ken Ham's eyes because, let's face it, I mean, he's kind of the leader there, and a lot of people, what they tend to do is kind of follow a certain ideology from whoever is the authority figure. We all do it. I mean, on different levels. If it's not religion, we do it through a certain science thing. If what people say in science, you have like someone there, Yeah. So yeah, it was. So the debate was nothing you would be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't say don't spend your time watching it.
Well,
It doesn't really get anywhere, you know.
Well, I think what's interesting and what at least it did was it seemed to get this, whether or not people were kind of annoyed with the subject or whatever, it got the conversation out even more, I think, in the mainstream.
Uh-huh.
You know, because this was a pretty high level, you know, debate. So I was just surprised to see the amount of people at least commenting on it that normally I would never have ever seen. You know, we're talking social media here. That would normally would never ever really comment on stuff like this. So it was a very high profile kind of debate, which we really don't see that much of.
No, you're right, man. You know, it's always these certain things always surprise me because everyday life, like with my friends, like we don't ever talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when this stuff happens, and you realize, like, oh my goodness, there's some of my friends that actually believe what Ken Ham believes. But it never comes up in our conversations. That's what I'm trying to talk about. Like, we can still be civil and do all this stuff, but at the end of the day, I just don't see eye to eye with certain people. But you know, it's funny. I think you might have seen this too, going around the internet. But of all people, you know, Pat Robertson was calling out Ken Ham in a sense, saying, you know, you're making us look like a joke. And I know, according to everyone, started, you know, trolling on that too, because Pat Robertson calling someone a joke about certain beliefs, you know, holding certain things, was quite ironic.
Let's take a quick musical break here, and then we'll come back and, you know, just kind of shoot the shit some more.
Sounds good, man.
With Joey Avalos. The band I'm playing today, they're called Shearwater, and it's basically a cover album, and it's out on Sub Pop Records right now. This band did a bunch of covers. The song I'm going to play is a cover of a Coldplay song. So this is Shearwater with Hurts Like Heaven. You're listening to the AxPx podcast.
Carved in a railing on a bridge in the park. Do you ever get the feeling that you're missing the mark? It's so cold, so cold. Written in marker on a factory sign. I struggle with the feeling that my life is not mine. And all the way to the airport, a withering rain, and a sense that the sky is eroding away. Still I won't let go. Still I won't let go. Can I use my heart like a weapon?
All right, well, that was Shearwater with their cover of the Coldplay song Hurts Like Heaven. You're listening to the AxPx podcast. It's just me and Joey kind of just, chatting it up a little bit, so hope everyone's all right with that. We haven't had a chance to talk this year yet, so Joey, what out of all the things you've been reading, what have you been reading lately that you're kind of working your way through?
Well, actually, I'm kind of listening to all different sides of the situation. I listen to a lot of Christian historians and stuff, and what I find in a lot of situations is trying to again, I'm not an expert in things, but be able to pull out what is history and what is theology. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they get kind of mashed together, mashed up, and it's sometimes you're hearing, a Christian historian saying something, and what I mean by Christian historian is that it's someone that is a devout Christian. There's not like a class you go become a Christian historian, but someone that defines himself as a Christian. And it's really hard sometimes to understand what is just their theology and what is just, again, it's presupposing certain things to fit the worldview, so they'll take certain evidence and throw it back into their worldview to come out with it. So if you're doing kind of more of like I've been really studying on more of the historical Jesus, mm-hmm. What can we really say about the historical Jesus, and how, you got Dominic Crossan thinks he was a cynic philosopher. Mm-hmm. But if you see that, but if you really take in the concept of what Dom Crossan really believes and stuff, he's all about social justice and about, it fits his worldview of his theology, Yeah. You start seeing people put Jesus into their worldview and how they see it. I think, that's what has changed a lot to me is like historically, like how you can still be a Christian and still look at things historically that might look like they go against, what you've been taught through traditions. But again, I think what you do is a lot of Christians that are able to keep them separate is because they do understand it's their belief in Jesus is faith. Mm-hmm. It's a miracle that they actually God has given the ability to faith. And one of the person I think I've been really I admired a lot, and I know you've taken a couple of his classes or his Yale courses, mm-hmm. is Dale Martin. Yeah. He's the professing Christian, but he also, I would agree with him on almost every aspect of historical method. And I honestly, most evangelical Christians that I know would think it's blasphemy, certain things, yeah. that like you can say that Jesus is this and that, but then on the other separate thing through his faith, he still believes in what the church has taught through tradition. Through the years and everything, to be able to not just say that my faith is built on a book. And mm-hmm. I think that's actually a modern view, a more modern view than most people realize, that it seems like people have gotten rid of believing in Jesus, in Jesus or in God. They have more belief in the Bible, and I see that a lot, that they're more worshiping a book than actually God themselves.
Yeah. Has there been anything that kind of stood out in what you've been reading this past few months here that shocked you or surprised you? Like
no, it's actually, there's a new book, from Bart Ehrman's that's coming out, How Jesus Became God. It's kind of coming out here in April, pretty soon. But he's been kind of blogging about some stuff, kind of gives some insights about certain things in the book that gives you a different perspective on how to read the Bible in a certain light of Paul's understanding who Christ was. Mm-hmm. And I think the craziest thing that I never thought about it. And there's, again, I don't have all the, if you join his blog, you'll be able to read more of the, what's it called? The research behind what I'm paraphrasing right now. Right. But the belief in Paul's belief in, Jesus as being God, almost like came as he was a pre-existing angel, and that he actually came into the world and became human. So Jesus was a pre-existing angel. And that's a new kind of whole thing. So when you read Paul's, in the light of that understanding who Jesus was, pre-existing Jesus was, then you could read the text completely different, and it opens your eyes to maybe make sense of some of the texts that were kind of confusing beforehand. And he has his reasons and his argument for it, which in certain, he's a textual critic, so he's reading the words in Greek and stuff, and Paul's letters and stuff, and certain words and what they meant, and how he uses the certain words and how he uses in other ways, and comparing them. Like when he's talking about angels, he's actually talking about Jesus as an angel. So it's quite interesting. I'm kind of curious to read more about that and hear the discussion between scholars about Paul's understanding of Jesus, because I think that could change a lot of people's views on, who knows, man? It probably maybe change no one's views. If they're, like you said, if they have their fingers in their ears and they don't like this kind of stuff, then so be it. But to me, I find it interesting.
Well, that's pretty fascinating, because the church, most of Christianity, I think, is kind of built off of Paul, and almost more so Paul than Jesus, in a sense. Jesus is the figure, but most modern evangelical churches based solely around, pretty much around mostly the books of Paul, or attributed to Paul. So I always found that fascinating, that Christianity, is based off of pretty much just one guy's viewpoint, Well,
if you take that in consideration, it's a pretty, I don't know, to me it's very, I won't use the word convincing, but it's a great story. Think about it. Paul, this guy is persecuting Christians, so he says, and he comes out of nowhere, has this divine encounter, whatever that was. He had some encounter with the resurrected Jesus, okay? So this changes his whole life into, spreading the gospel to Gentiles. That alone is like, that's definitely a poster child, It's like, wow, that's definitely going to fill seats if that was a movie, because it is it can convict people into seeing like, okay, well, he knew the earliest disciples, he knew he had this stuff, this correlation, he had this experience, and he says that he didn't collaborate him on the information, but that they had the same kind of similar experiences. What those experiences are, is still up in the air. We can all assume what did Paul actually, what was the vision actually like, and I think a lot of stuff too with Christianity too is that we have what I always had a tough time too is what I've come to realize lately, and I think it's kind of obvious after a while, is that we're, you and I are products, are humans living in the late 20th and earliest 21st century, to actually say that our minds have the capacity to think and see the world like first century Christians is almost near impossible. We could try to understand how they thought, but for us to physically think of that is really tough. It's just like asking them back then to see the world through our eyes. It's really tough and very difficult, So having that, that's how I think there's only so far that I think a lot of people are trying to do that, but at the end of the day, I don't think no one can. No. We're not built that way. We have cars, we have cell phones, we have internet. All the knowledge that we know now. It's hard to be able to go back and think and see the world, because that's where I think what helped me understand more about early Christianity is to really understand that they were writing stuff in the context of their world. It's just like you and I writing something right now when there's internet and football and whatever you want to say, everything under the sun now that is available to us, writing a letter today. And that's, trying to understand what they saw and how they saw the world, and the people saw the world around them and what that meant. I think what enriches the text of the Bible is that instead, and this is my personal thought, instead of taking this, like if you're going to use theology, base it on something historical. I think it actually can enrich people's faith instead of just completely killing it. Yeah, some of it, depending on how your faith is. I think if you were a strong fundamentalist, I think if you took a critical historical approach, I think you held everything, said this has to be like the literal everything. I don't think that faith could withstand a critical historical thing. But if you're open to say, hey, you know what, you start with, I do feel like there is some kind of prime mover. Maybe you just believe, like you're a deist, you believe in God, and you can resonate to the story of Jesus, and feel like God has somehow the experience, whatever these people in first century experienced, the Jesus experience, does it have any truth in my life now? Is there some kind of way, if I do believe in God, is there some way do I feel connected through these stories, and not always that, there's a difference between truth and facts, something that resonates to you is truth, you might not have a tangible reason why you feel something way. You can have some psychological reason. People can sociology and all that stuff culturally and everything like that. But I'm saying something that you feel is truthful. Like, why do, I want to love my neighbor. I want to feed the poor, help the homeless, whatever the sociological things. I think it could be really healthy doing that and start getting away from some of the putting our 21st century on the text itself. And I see that a lot in my really strict evangelical friends that will do, especially with the case of homosexuality. They'll take certain texts from Paul or from the Old Testament, and out of all those, they focus on that and say, this is what it means. And I think if you do a critical historical approach to the Bible, I think you might be surprised at what you find.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Cool. Well, man, it sounds like you haven't missed a beat. Jeez. I feel like I've gotten dumber and you've gotten smarter the past 6 months.
No, man. The carrot is still out there, man,
So, I wanted to bring up kind of, we've talked to a few atheists in the past and kind of the whole atheist movement. Do you feel like, I feel like the atheist movement's kind of getting split a little bit. So you got some of them that are wanting to start, like atheist churches, and they're turning into like fundamental atheists. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
right.
About kind of trying to bring people into atheism and things like that. Have you had any contact with anyone, any kind of splintering off, people splintering off from atheism at all in where you're at, or been reading about anything like that?
I come up across those kind of articles and stuff, and I read them and stuff, but I don't know if they'll be lasting. I think, I see what they're trying to do, and I understand that, you want to have some kind of community. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Is that if you're sharing a certain kind of ideology or a certain worldview, you want to have a place where you can come together, and I think a lot of people that do leave the church, that are really heavily in a church, that's what they always say, what do you miss most about it? It's just, the community, It's not even so much like they were going to church every Sunday. It's not so much that they were getting something out of the service. It's just that they were around like-minded individuals, be able to hang out, do certain things. And now if they shed those kind of certain beliefs or whatever, that fills a void.
Yeah.
How can I fill that void? Have some kind of community. But I don't know, man. I feel it can't get fundamentalist on both sides. Me tending to just be a little less arrogant on certain things. Like, I don't like to have this absoluteness,
Right.
or come off that way. And I don't even think most atheists have that absolute truth. I think it's really a problem with definitions, and that's why you and I don't like titles, because you get categorized in certain people's views on certain words.
Yeah.
Like, you call yourself a Christian, what does that even mean? Okay, what kind of Christian are you? Are you, and you call yourself an atheist, okay, what kind of atheist are you? And then you're going to get in this whole situation of trying to defend your worldviews, instead of just say, hey, let's just talk about the issues. Let's talk about ideology. Let's talk about that, instead of worrying about what the title is.
Yeah.
We can take every situation and figure out it. And I'm kind of one of those people, I'm more gracious to the point, if people are taking care of others, loving one another, trying to help the needy, help the poor, feed the hungry, and just not being an asshole, they're all right with me. honestly, because at the end of the day, that's you either an asshole or you're not an asshole.
Right.
and that's kind of why I view my worldview. It's like everything else in between, we might disagree on certain things, but if we can agree on that, I think we got something there, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish it's interesting how people feel the need to bond over, say, religious matters or philosophical matters. Like those are in a lot of people's minds, that's the glue that will hold them together. You know what I mean? And as far as having a community, but I wish you always wish that you don't need that you can just enjoy those around you. Because I live in a neighborhood. I live in a suburb neighborhood. There's all these people on my street, and I'm sure we all have different ideologies and go to different events, some different churches or whatever. But I find that a lot of us, especially of us with kids, like that's our glue that holds us together. I don't agree with half the guys. We never actually really talk religion or anything like that. But like that's I have a good time hanging out with everyone because none of that ever comes up. We're just enjoying being with each other. So I always find it kind of fascinating when people think if they leave a church or leave a certain religion that they feel like they don't have any community at all, and it's almost like a mindset. You need to kind of change your thinking and just say, well, I'm a human being, I need to kind of just get out there and mingle with people and be with people and hear their story,
Yeah, it could be one of those situations like if you split up with a spouse or something like that, you got divorced and you're like, oh, well, I want to get back in the scene. Where do I go? Do I go to a bar?
Right.
Do I go to a singles meetup, kind of thing. I think that's the whole thing. That's a built-in system. The church is a built-in system. It has its functions, not only there to worship your God, but to also help on the social side of things too. So
to each their own.
Yep, man. And there was something profound. I was watching a debate between Mike Licona and Dale Martin on the divinity of Christ. And Dale Martin said something that was really profound to me from his point of view, why he is a Christian, even though he believes all these certain things that historically about Christianity that seem like most evangelical Christians or fundamentalists would be like, oh my gosh, you don't believe in God, you're not a Christian, And what he says, is first he goes, I'm a postmodernist, so, I can be able to do history and also keep it separate from what I believe. And he also said that, he believes that his faith is a miracle. His faith wasn't anything he did to earn it. It's just that he wakes up and God has given him the gift of faith. And that's why he says we can't be proud of anything. Our faith isn't anything to be proud of. We didn't earn anything to it because it's a gift from God. So if you do really believe, then it's a gift. And if people don't believe and don't have the faith, we can't be mad at them because, again, he believes that God gives us faith. Yeah.
I mean, it's the journey is a fascinating thing because I have kind of my ups and downs even now. And the other day, I mean, I was out running and just, I think the day before I had seen the video of that guy that went up, there was the whole Red Bull kind of thing where the guy jumped from like the outer atmosphere or whatever.
Yeah.
Parachuted. Like, gosh, how many miles was that? Like 91 miles?
I don't know, man. It made me queasy just seeing the video.
and he said something that I can't remember the quote. I've been trying to find the quote. I'm meaning to write it down, but of course the way things go with my life, I never get to that. But he said something. He said something like, sometimes you have to kind of get above everything to kind of be above everything, to realize how small we really are. It was kind of a profound quote. Like in the scheme of things, we're just these tiny, insignificant people, and. So and then I was out running, I think the next day, and the clouds were just like, the clouds looked amazing, when I was running, and I get this like stir of emotion like as I'm running, and of course I got like some post rock, like explosions in the sky in my headphones, so of course everything just seems majestic,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. It's like in this world, like we're tiny, and to think that we have all the answers, and that we can say, oh no, we're all alone and we're nothing, But I talked to my wife about this. I'm like, I can't go all the way and just say there's no God or there's nothing, because it's our existence that is so tiny, and then the world that we're placed in and the universe we're placed in is so huge and complex and full of mystery that I just I can't just go all that way and just say, I don't believe and we're nothing and we're just gonna live and die and nobody's gonna care in the long run, So I think I've gotten over a lot of things this past year, and I'm just like, well, I know that I can say that I don't believe that we're all alone, and I can pretty much say that just because, and having kids, like going through having 3 kids, and just the miracle of what life is, and seeing a little person grow and develop, it's incredible. So I can never side with thinking that we're all alone, and I don't think it's ever going to change. But the difference with me is, even on the other perspective, I still think there's a lot unknown as far as our existence and who created us, and that's what we're all trying to find. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my goal this year for the podcast is to try to get as many different people on, and just hearing their stories, and just kind of I'm gearing more towards, I think, artists and creative types, because I feel like those are kind of our philosophers. Kind of
I like that.
The philosophers of this generation are more artists, and there's different levels,
So that's so Pete Rollins of you, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's where I got it from.
No, I'm just kidding,
but so I'm going to try to do more of those interviews, and we'll see how it goes for the rest of the year. But what are your thoughts as far as where you are, and do you think you're alone? Do you think there's a creator and like that? Like, it's all still up in the air for me, but I'm like, I'm okay with saying that, yeah, there's something bigger than us for sure.
Yeah, I think all we have is our language. Even the word God is a word that represents something, and we're trying to figure out. It's just like a placeholder for me right now.
Yeah.
Like we got language, and I think language can only go so far. Yeah. Words can only go so far to actually describe something, and especially if it's so beyond our knowledge, then how can we even start to really conceive a God, with language, actually capitulate it all. So I don't know. With me, I like to stay humble about certain things. When you do look at the cosmos, as they say, you look out there and you say you feel significant when the guy's about to jump off and looking from above there, is to have that humility, and say, hey, you know what? I might not have a know-it-all, but I'm open to learning and to experiencing. But also, I think it could be dangerous to have more of an absolute worldview, because that can get really fundamental. And could do more damage, Right. When people have certain kind of authority things, like, well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that, and this is why I believe it and all stuff. It can get really dangerous, because what you're saying is my interpretation of this Bible, of put into English,
Yeah.
and to probably through certain filters, through whatever their church they grew up with, is the right belief, And if it's certain things about, like, let's face it, man, the church has gone through a lot of changes through the generations, man.
Yeah.
I mean, through slavery to how we treat women, and now we're on the homosexual situation. You see that switching gears a little bit. Some that were really against it are coming out and saying, okay, yeah, I think it's okay if homosexuals can have a meaningful relationship and be married,
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing, man. It's a social change in the church, and it's going to be interesting to see what the Christian church looks like in the next 10 to 50 years, how I could see a rise of fundamentalism coming up again, honestly. Like you see in other certain social issues, through slavery and women's issues too. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting year, and I'm going to try to keep the balance of light and heavy, podcasts as we go.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you and I will be talking more this year. Like I said, I'm not going with as gung-ho with the podcast as trying to get one out every single week. And just, my goal is 2 times a month. And if it's, maybe one interview, we'll see how it goes. But
yeah,
I'm sure there'll be more of Joey, everybody.
Well, I didn't, and I don't think I really answered your question. I was kind of giving you some preface of that stuff. But I think, if I had to say believe, I wouldn't be surprised that there's something bigger than us, whatever that is. I'm using language right now to describe it.
Yeah.
And about Christian faith and stuff, I think there is still certain tenets of the Christian tradition that I resonate with.
Yeah, me too.
And that's what keeps me not to completely, like they say, throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this week's show. I think I have nothing else to talk about. So.
Well, actually, what about your new podcast, man? I saw you going to start up a new one.
Yeah. If you're interested in horror movies, me and a Twitter friend, I have actually never met this person in person, but we kind of got the idea to do a podcast based solely around, there's a kind of a micro label, or not, I'm not sure if I'm using the term correct. There's a company called Shout Factory, and they have a subsidiary that only focuses on kind of underseen or cult type sci-fi and horror movies, and they call that Scream Factory. So my goal is to we're gonna hit every single Scream Factory release and talk about them. And so if you're interested in that, the website is thescreamcast.com, and then the Twitter is Scream_cast. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited about it. A little change of pace. And it's going to be another, twice a month type thing. Nothing crazy. And, I don't know. But nothing profound with that one at all. Just we're going to talk about horror movies.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Cool, man.
So, yeah. So, that's about it. If you want to contact us, hit up the Twitter. It's the AxPx. You can also go to theaxpx.com and send us an email from there. If you're listening to this show and you feel like you have a story or something you would want to talk about, and kind of a journey of your own that you feel like would be fun to talk to, just hit us up. Let us know. I don't think I'm going to be trying to hit any big interviews this year. I've kind of wanted to make the show more about kind of everyday people kind of going through and we're all on our own kind of journeys, and so if you have something you want to talk about, hit us up on the email and we can get you on the show if we feel like it'll be it'll fill an hour. So that's gonna be it for this week's show. I don't know what's gonna happen the next couple weeks as far as who I'm gonna be talking to next. I have a few ideas, so just I guess look on Twitter, follow me on Twitter on the AxPx, and I'll throw out hints as they come out. And Joey, you're on Twitter as well.
Yep, just my name, Joey Avalos.
Joey Avalos. And until next time, everybody, have a great next couple weeks. Bye-bye.